It's Astrology Roast. I think it needs to sound like a shitty intro, like a funny shitty intro.
Hi everyone and welcome back to Astrology Roast. My name is Karen.
My name is Etai.
And we are sitting on the floor of our apartment because a big thing happened in the last few days. The couch that we know and love and have created this podcast from on many, many occasions and spent many nights on our phones separately.
Oh my God.
So much has happened on that couch, and that couch has been taken away a couple of days ago by a hipster couple from Hobart. So,
Hobart is in Tasmania.
Yeah, Hobart is in Tasmania, so it's kind of a far way away, and the couch is no longer, and it's a really therapeutic, cathartic experience, but...
Yeah, so I have been living in Melbourne for 3.5 years, and I'm moving back to Israel in the next week. And I know we haven't been really acknowledged that on the podcast so far because I was trying to be really present in my life about doing the goodbye. There's no right or wrong, but there is present and detached. And I wanted to be a bit more present, but I think that by not acknowledging it on the podcast, I kind of was able to acknowledge it everywhere else. But in the podcast, I was pretending like it's not happening, but it is happening. And even though I said goodbye already to so many people that have accompanied my time in Melbourne and my Melbourne family and, the school that I worked at and my students and, really, now that you started talking about the couch is the first time that I get teary. It's that the couch has held me and still is holding my soul in many ways.
That couch started as a beige, white, cream coloured couch, which was taken from a rich person's home.
Yeah.
And, I remember the woman we took it from screaming, don't damage the walls, don't smash the walls. And it was that was almost the beginning of when me and you moved in together.
Yeah.
We didn't know each other very well.
Do you think this couch was her? I feel like I'm saying her. Is that sexist to call it her?
The couch being a female. Well, it's definitely a female because it's held and support me for 3 years. I don't think a man would have been able to hold all of that woman.
No,
that is I.
She got to be as strong as a woman. I always say
she's exhausted as well. She's a strong, exhausted woman.
She's exhausted, but she's still at it. She's still she's showing up.
Yeah.
So I think when she came to our house, she was like, "Fuck me!" I degraded. I went down in the social level.
Yeah, the couch came from a rich person's house to our humble abode.
I think she learned to love us after all.
Yeah.
I will say that both of us, we will continue Astrology Roast.
Yeah.
It might change a little bit, but for the next few weeks, we already have taken care of our listeners and our community, and we recorded a few episodes in advance because this is the type of people that we are. We're think in advance, and we're going to release them fortnightly. So for those of you who are not English native speakers, I know fortnightly is something that I had to learn. Is every 2 weeks. It's a weird word, in my opinion. But we thought that it would be cool to do an episode about what, got us started and what was the journey of Astrology Roast and go down memory lane. But before we do that, what star sign do you think our couch still is in the new horrible place that she is right now?
She's taken a turn for the worse. The people that collected her said, we really could only afford to get a real dump, a real shack. And they said to me, we're going to chuck the couch out after a couple of months just to tide us over for this time. I was like, I don't need to hear that about this couch, but I was very pleased that it was still going somewhere other than the bin. But what star sign is she or her or them or him? I'm trying to think of a star sign that would nourish someone in its bosom, in its kind of secure, warm.
To me, it's a Leo. To be honest, I feel like Leos are so comforting. Even though it's the stereotype is me, Leos, when they nurture someone, they nurture them. You know, when Lauren, our Leo friend, took me to the hotel, I felt like my soul is being bathed like by angels. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gone, but we're still here.
On the floor.
On the floor. Like we're in mourning. And in Jewish culture, when you are grieving and mourning after the death of a loved one, you sit on low stools.
Or the floor.
Or the floor, and you tear an item of clothing, or you wear, dark clothing and you tear it. Now, Etai today is wearing a Fila tracksuit, and I'm wearing a bright coloured blue something, and we don't look like we're sad, because I think this is the birth of a new chapter in life, whilst it is the ending of something super beautiful. So I'm happy the couch is gone to a worse home. But yeah, I thought it would be really cool to take you through a bit of, 3183, which is our postcode, the people, the smells, the sights, the stories, the star signs that have made this apartment, this neighborhood, such a pivotal, amazing, hilarious place to inhabit for the last 3 years.
Oh my God. So 3183 is the postcode of St. Kilda East. This is our suburb that we often refer to as the town that we run. We run this town.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a tattoo to symbolize the time that I lived in Melbourne, the 3.5, even I would say 4 years. And I thought to get 3183, but then because my grandparents are from Morocco and they weren't at the Holocaust, when I told my friends here in Melbourne that I want to do 3183, everyone was like, oh my God, it's like getting a number on your body, like from the Holocaust. So now I don't know what tattoo to do, but I know that the effect of 3183 is ingrained in my soul. So what was a few of your favorite moments in this neighborhood / apartment?
I think it's been definitely the birth of so many creative projects here. So we've mentioned before our one-off musical, which was based loosely on Rihanna's life. Initially, it was meant to be a reflection on Middle Eastern politics and war and conflict resolution. It did transform into something quite different. I'm very excited now that you're moving into the Middle East.
Yeah.
We will have a Middle Eastern correspondent aspect of this astrology-related podcast, so I think it'll be nice to keep abreast of that. But so many things, so many times seated on that couch, like you playing Britney Spears whilst you're in the toilet for an hour, the shoes of the men that have been visiting the house for you to make sweet love to. Sometimes I would come home and there'd be these two ugly pair of shoes. And I'm like, who is in the house right now with Etai? They're not your shoes.
Oh my God. Well, the time that you're referring to was the time where a Virgo guy came to the house when I was in an emotional, getting ready for my departure. And this guy comes in and he's a Virgo, so he takes his shoes off at the door. And I'm like, we don't do that here, but it was important for him. And then went to my room, we had some fun, and then he noticed my tarot deck, and he was like, oh, do you do tarot? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, oh, can you do one for me? And I was really late. I wanted to go to the sea bath to wash myself, to wash the shame of that sexual experience.
Do you think everyone at the St Kilda sea baths, and for those who aren't familiar with that weird place, it is a small swimming pool and sauna that is made from all ocean water?
Yeah.
Do you think, and it's quite gross as well, it's very nourishing, but it's quite gross. Do you think everyone there is washing off past sexual or most recent sexual relationships to cleanse?
100. They're washing something, that's for sure.
There's a lot of gay men there checking each other out.
Yeah, but everyone has that same sad eyes. Everyone has something sad in their eyes.
So sad.
And it's also, they say it's like ocean water, but you can't leave the place without stinking of chlorine. I don't get it. It's disgusting. Anyway, so he gets me to do his tarot, and I told him what I think. It was like, there's two guys in my life, and I was like, yeah, one of them is not telling you the truth. And he's like, he was like, not, he didn't really believe me. And then the next day, he sends me screenshots of a conversation with this guy telling him that he basically was cheating on him for the whole time. Yeah, and I was like, sorry, like he was like he wanted to do another session,
Yeah.
tarots. And I was like, I'm sorry, like I have a few more weeks in Melbourne and I'd rather spend them with.
So in the words of Mariah Carey, how about you get the fuck out?
Yep.
Yep. In nicer words. Well, and I think there has been throughout our time in this home not only a creative energy in this space, but a very psychic, spiritual energy. For those who have been listening to this podcast for a while, you will be quite familiar with Etai's story of when he almost saged himself to death, trying to sage your room and create a spiritual psychic energy, and then you fell asleep and you saged the walls black.
Oh my God.
And the smoke alarm went off, didn't it? After a while, you almost died of smoke/sage inhalation. So there's definitely a really cleansed energy, but there's also, you know, we have had a couple of ghosts, quite a few ghosts that have visited this home. So I definitely feel like your grandparents have been in and out. You said that your grandmother always advised to have a butter knife and a bag of salt under your bed. So since I heard that from you, I've had a little knife, just a butter knife, not a big knife, and some salt under my mattress, which I think has been, look, the sexual energy it's brought has not been great, let's be honest. But it has, nothing bad, khamsa has happened to me, thankfully. So, I wouldn't be suggesting it as an erotic tool for your bedroom, but as a spiritual protective thing, you might want to do that at home.
Yeah. My grandma was, as we know, I don't know I think we talked about it, but my grandma didn't have a birthday. So we don't know her star sign, but obviously basing it on knowing her personality, I think she's a Pisces, and my grandfather was an Aries, so they were like the cycle. He was like the...
But do you think that every grandmother and grandfather of that era from Morocco, like, are they all Pisces grandmothers and Aries grandfathers?
I don't think so, because...
Because you said she wore the apron all the time. That was her dress code, was apron. And your grandfather was this, like, tall, quiet, strong man. Like, everyone's got an apron-wearing grandmother and a strong, silent grandfather.
I know, but they also had these, like, little quirks about them and, like, things that were... like more specific to a personality than just the like Moroccan stereotype that they wore. So I think she was a Pisces, and she had this like, psychic energy, and she does visit me every now and then in dreams. But I think the most memorable moment, and I don't think we spoke about it on the podcast, is one time when we went to the equinox. What was it? Like a spiritual Halloween something with Romy. So if you've listened, I think it's episode 21, Witches Can Have It All, with our dear friend Romy the Witch. She took us once to this spiritual equinox solstice. It was winter solstice, and they took us onto like this meditation that we were visiting our ancestors, and I really felt like my grandma in the room. And that was in a different house that we went to do that. And then we came back home, and we were both a bit like hazy and daisy, which I don't know if that's a phrase, but that's what it felt like.
That sounds like an amazing slogan for a t-shirt, like hazy and daisy.
Hazy and daisy.
Don't talk to me.
Or like a brand of ice cream. I feel like low carb or low sugar ice cream. Hazy and daisy. Anyway, so... we came back and we were talking about like our grandparents and how we felt them in the room, and then we heard something falling in your room.
Was it the butter? And it was it the butter knife?
And we were like, "Oh, this is the moment where we get murdered? The moment that we always thought was gonna come." And we went to your room, and the butter knife and the salt were like a meter away from your bed.
Yeah.
Now that's like they are placed under the mattress, in between the mattress and the bed frame, like. You need to pick up a mattress and take it out and put it a meter away from your bed.
Your grandmother was definitely in this home. She might still be here. I always felt that she's been a very comforting, loving presence here.
She has. She's amazing.
I feel like my ancestors they like to move around a bit, so they stick to me, but it's not a home, it's not a place-based presence. So I've definitely had my grandmother's sister hanging around to get some recognition, but I don't know if she's in the home. But she's been great as well. Look, they've all been great.
Well, they all. Talking about being murdered,
Yeah.
one of my favorite times in this house was when I tried to make kombucha. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be that one of these like wholesome people. I'm going to have a kombucha. I'm going to make it and flavor it in like the best flavors ever. And obviously I did one batch and then I got lazy and I stopped. And then it just sat there and it kept on growing.
The SCOBY.
The SCOBY. And I don't know if any of you, just Google like a SCOBY or Google kombucha if you don't know what it looks like. But it kind of looked like an alien. And my favorite bit was that like every time you walked past it, you would go like, this one day it's going to murder us in our sleep. One day it's going to get out of this jar and murder us in our sleep. And I was like, yeah. One day I just killed it.
Yeah, because you could tell it was absorbing information and knowledge about how to
Our
grow
habits.
arms and how to grow legs and how it would slowly like twist open the jar top of its home and like, you know, in the dead of night it was going to walk over, take that butter knife from under our mattress and
the soul.
Slaughter us and create a new life.
It learned our patterns. It knew in 2 a.m. the boy leaves the house and sends the girl pictures of the man that he's gonna meet and addresses.
Yeah, at
for
3 a.m.
safety.
the woman living in the house is still in her bed, alone, as usual.
4 a.m.
Yeah.
The woman came to...
No further entries.
Oh my God. Well, that SCOBY is gone unless it's like climbing its way in the gutters like to get vengeance. But we're not going to be here when it comes.
Wow.
One thing that I also want to talk about is the Astrology Roast community. That's been growing. And we actually made some human... Besides like the Instagram, obviously, conversations and the people that we kind of like follow on Instagram and know about... We also met amazing people, and one of them is our friend, the Gemini listener of the podcast, that is going to move into our apartment.
It's amazing. I'm very excited about that because, and I think we might touch on this in a second, but you know, there's a lot of sadness and grief that comes with this kind of change, and knowing that someone who, you know, you and now I have connected with through this beautiful podcast, it's been such a pleasure. That someone like that will move into this, you know, physically cold home, but emotionally warm home is very comforting. So it's helping me deal with it. And it's helping me clean the apartment like less vigorously. Because I'm like, I know the real estate agents give zero fucks about this apartment. Like they really just, we could have 50 backpackers living here and we should have financially.
And we almost
did.
have.
But yeah, they really, really don't care at all about what happens here, which is so liberating as well. Like there's house parties upstairs every Friday night. A Justin Bieber song comes on at about 6:30 p.m.
You're the one, yeah.
You're the one, yeah. And that's when the party starts upstairs for the revolving door of people that live there.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a whole lot of weird shit that goes on in this enormous apartment block that no one cares about. It's the apartment that time forgot, in a way.
And everyone forgot.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the word grief.
Yes.
And, you know, in this podcast...
Did I?
In this podcast, you know, we like to keep it light and breezy.
Yeah.
Usually we...
Like a cover girl.
Yeah. That's why the recurring theme of every week is transgenerational trauma. But today we're going to maybe take a slight diversion.
Oh, and just before we divert, I like that you said transgenerational trauma instead of intergenerational trauma, because instead of it being passed down generation to generation to generation, it can actually just skip a whole generation and bite you in the bum. You know, your great-great-great-great-great-grandchild will all of a sudden be like, hang on a second, take a jacket, it's cold, you're going to get a cold. You know, like, and you're like, what? But hang on, I'm a surfer living in Byron Bay, Australia, and I have blonde hair, and, you know, my great-great auntie was Jewish, but, you know, what? So it can come to you at any stage.
We had a brunch and we were talking about past lives, and I remembered a memory when I was 17. This psychic came to our town, and my town was like super traditional, religious, and she came and she was this like liberated psychic. Like everyone came, I think, to see her as an anecdote. It was like a Wednesday night. she came to speak in the like center, like how do you call it, community center. There were like 50 people there that really had nothing else to do. And I was obviously like the little witch boy wanting to discover my spirituality. I dragged my best friend there and we sat front row in front of her, like front center. And then she was talking about past lives and whatever. And then she stops literally like abruptly in the middle of her chat, and she points at us and she goes, "What's your relationship?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're best friends. Like, I'm secretly gay," and she is like, she's secretly single, but wanting to get married, even though she was 16. And she goes, "You've known each other, your relationship." And I was like, "Okay." And then she points at me and she said, "You were a soldier. World War II.
Oh.
World War II. I hate that. Like, it's really hard on the tongue. Like, World War.
World War.
"And you," and she points at her, "you were a little kid. And you killed her." "And you've known each..." And I was like,
all right,
okay.
Settle down, lady.
Okay. And like, this is in front of 50 other people from the town. And like, she's just like, "You were a soldier. You were a Nazi, and you were a little Jewish kid, and you murdered her." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, a part of me was like super excited to learn about my past life. Another part of me was like,
"And oh my God,
bitch, you crazy?"
She's like totally erased your Moroccan identity again, putting a Ashkenazi, Eastern European, Jewish, white experience onto you. So you grow up in a country where everyone tells you that your history is only about Eastern European Jewish history.
Yeah.
And again, a psychic is telling you your past life
In my past
is European as a soldier.
Yeah,
oh, you poor thing.
I didn't even think about it. Yeah, but so back to your point. Transgenerational trauma can skip. So maybe like one of my grandkids will go like to a Jew and be like, murder them or something based on my Nazi past,
yes,
which I reject, and I disagree with the Nazi philosophy, for the record.
Look, I can say though, I've sat and observed you having a number of fortune tellers and psychic readings and tarot readings. One of my most notable, there is a tarot / psychic that operates in Sydney from a range of markets there, and she has some laminated pieces of paper that she puts up to advertise herself, and they all say that she has read tarot in the Playboy Mansion.
She's a Leo.
She's Jewish. She has read at the Playboy Mansion, I think 40 years ago. Wow. the article looks a bit old, but she's practicing from like Glebe markets and Bondi markets, and she was like, "You know what, you're going to be okay. You've got abundance and you've got good fortune." And every other fortune teller that you've seen has kind of said something similar. So I think in the context of talking now a little bit about grief, which, culturally we understand quite well, but also everyone in life will experience grief in different ways. But we both know that everything's going to be okay. And, we got this, and there's a lot of supports in place. But there's a lot to grieve because there's a lot of beautiful stuff that's happened on that couch, in this apartment, in this town, interstate. So we thought, what better way to channel that grief but to tell you our wisdom about the stages of grief. You might be in a different state of grief yourself, or a loved one, or a friendship that's changed, or a boyfriend that's just left, and you might be doing those Google searches at 4 a.m. about the stages of grief. So we've summarized it for you, so don't worry about that.
And by summarized it, it's like we didn't invent it. These are the 5 stages of grief that every university or psychology in year 12, like when you do psychology major, you learn that probably like in your second psychology class. But it's also on Google, so knowledge is for everyone. Yeah. So the 5 stages of grief, I remember studying it for the first time, and to me, it's a really helpful tool. And I know, Karen, you like to say that they're not a linear process.
No, they're not.
What are they then?
There's there's these known stages of grief that people expect that they go through. And also there's a very common understanding collectively about what grief looks like and what we grieve for. However, as with most things, it is much more complex and unique. Sometimes, we collectively can understand when someone is grieving a death or mourning a breakup. But sometimes we grieve things very differently, and sometimes grief looks a lot like other experiences. And we assume that we've made 5 steps forward, and then something throws you back 3 steps backwards, and you like, well, I'm right back where I started. So it isn't a linear process. It's something that is continual, but I think it is something that can change and grow and develop. And I think, for instance, in grieving friendship, like we don't have in society the same way that we acknowledge grieving a friendship or grieving a loss or a change in identity, And same with this departure, with Etai's moving back to, I like to say the Middle East because it sounds more cool, like he's a Middle Eastern correspondent,
Definitely.
but in the Jewish community, living in Israel is not as cool. But you're moving back to your home in Israel, and you have impacted so many people's lives, and so many people are feeling a loss or a void that can't be filled. And I'm sure you'll feel that as well for them. But everyone's going to be sad and weird about that in a really different way. Some people will just be completely dissociated, detached, all good, got this. That's my preferred mechanism. Like, it's really been helpful for me in the past. But
Same.
other people will try and attach like a leech to you for the next 6 days to kind of
which
absorb
I
as much of you. And I think that's also beautiful. There's a whole lot of disconnecting practices that I've found to be quite, well, the opposite of grounding. I like, I'm a Gemini. I love to go into the air and to stay in the air, the ether, and to be off the grid. So, for you, maybe that's looked like going to Kmart at 2 a.m, which is like our Walmart or our discount store.
I am going straight from this recording session to buy a new iPhone.
Exactly. Purchasing items, going to get food. I got a Magnum ice cream at 1:00 last night because I was feeling stressed. I have been known to stalk people, past lovers in the past. My stalking has increased in the last week.
And I think that every episode we're trying to offer something. And I think what I'm trying to offer today is, when it comes to grief, kind of like we have a very certain image usually about what grief looks like. But it's really important to recognize the different ways it manifests. According to your star sign, according to your upbringing. But to me, it helps, for example, to know that if I'm going to see the new Avengers movie 3 times in a row, and I cry every time, it might not be just because Spider-Man is saying goodbye to Tony Stark, Like, I might be crying also for things that happened to me in year 5.
And that's 31 years almost of insight and practice. That's what you get. You know that you're in the Avengers movie and you might be crying about other things when you're crying.
And I'm like, you know what? If something makes me sad and I'm crying, why not also cry the tears of unfinished business from when I was a teenager?
Yes.
So the 5 stages of grief as described, I also saw when I Googled it this morning just to make sure that we have the right ones. I saw there was another question. It was like, what are the 7?
Oh, shit.
But I didn't even click it. So there might be 2
5
added.
is enough.
I like to keep it traditional. So we start with denial. And denial... and if we talk about death, the denial is the moment where the person that is being brought the news is saying, like, it didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. I don't believe this. But again, if we talk about death, it's very like black and white. It's very clear. But what does denial look like when it's, quitting your job or moving countries or breaking up with someone?
Yes, well, I think it's looked like Etai's not leaving. He's going to come back. You keep saying, I might come back, which I feel is a very disruptive thing to be saying to those that care about you in the community, just saying. So that's disruptive of my grief process. But anyway, what else does it look like? Really not wanting to get rid of any of the things in the apartment. So today we had a giant cutout of Kanye West that has been sitting here for years. And he has now gone onto the road and someone has collected him, which I'm glad. I thought in St Kilda East people might not collect him. It's a very white,
I love that
gentrified area, but he's found a new home.
He was taken by like in an
in a
hour.
second.
And I love that like there was a mirror there. I took out a mirror and Kanye West, and the mirror was still there.
Yeah.
The functioning mirror, but the cutout of Kanye West
has
was
been
not.
snapped up. There is still a picture that Etai made for me on one of my birthdays, which has 5 different pictures of Rihanna with a quote from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. That's still here, and I feel like I haven't been able yet to chuck that out. So that's definitely a denial on my behalf.
And the quote says, there will never... What does it say? You can read it.
There will never be an obstacle in front of you which is not in your power to pass. And that's powerful in and of itself, but picture that with 6 pictures of Rihanna around it, and you feel a sense of empowerment. Now, I'm sure I've talked about Riri for a long time, but sometimes I actually just think of her and she comforts me knowing that the world has meaning, purpose, and we'll be okay.
I think denial also looks like buying 3 new tracksuits when I have a limited amount of kilograms to take with me to Israel.
Shopping.
Not talking about it on the podcast. That's completely denial. And maybe there is a point to make about like being like your star sign. I feel like different star sign will find a way to deny, in different ways. Like, I think the Aries in me just like pretends to keep going until I'm not here, like to keep it full power. Even at work, I was like every day, even my last 2 days at work, I was just like working as if I'm coming back on Monday. In whether I think denial for other star sign will be like not to show up, like just denying their life.
And mine, so I'm a Gemini, but I'm sure there's other star signs that I identify with. Mine is to shut up shop and skip town. That is, I've tried not to do it this time and I can't. But, pack up things, get in the car, skip town, get out. So when I saw that couch going, I was like, finally, I can enter into my process of grieving, which is to shut down and go.
Yeah, and it's probably more like difficult for like, fixed signs being able to deal with the change.
Yes, and they want to, I've noticed the fixed signs...
Like a Leo.
Yeah, like a Leo. They want to memorialize your departure. So instead of denial, maybe it's another version of denial. It's all about, how many gifts can I give you? How many letters can I write for you? How many celebrations can we have? How many catch-ups can we have before you leave?
Yeah.
But I think for Gemini and some of the other more detached, disconnected signs, it's like, is Aries fixed?
No, Aries is cardinal.
Yeah.
So it's, for me, I think cardinal signs, they view it as like the new beginning. Like what keeps me going is like
newness.
The new life in Israel. So like I focus on that. Or like what am I going to do? What am I going to work at?
And I'm immutable. Am I mutable?
Yeah. So I feel like you feel it. You feel the change. Like you're in the change is where you kind of like feel the feels.
And another astrological kind of reference point for this, for our grief chat, for anyone that's grown up and had the privilege of knowing their full natal chart, if you were born with 1 million retrogrades happening, you might, like me, have assumed that it was a mistake that you were born. Because I've got like 6 retrogrades were happening when my mum gave birth to me in Clayton Monash Hospital.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure she had the epidural and was like, get this thing out of me ASAP. I wasn't ready. I was half-baked. But if you have the retrogrades happening when you were born, that means that whenever retrogrades are happening now, you're actually in your best state. You're in your comfortable flow state. And that might be similar for those who are the mutable signs. You're comfortable with change. Change is how you live. And so for me, I'm just like, okay, let's change, let's move. I can't sit and memorialize very well.
No.
I can't feel it. I can't go into it. And that's my way of being. But I know that other people grieve differently. And so there are other ways that are probably more healthy. And that might be to memorialize, to acknowledge that it's happening. So denial, look, it's tried and tested. It's really important.
It's important to go through like the 5 stages, in different times.
Or
Because,
some of the stages, or none of the
or
stages.
not, yeah, but like it, in a way, it's like it protects you. Like
Yeah.
you need to feel denial when it's really heavy, when it's too much to
It's
feel.
too much. You got to get to work. You got to go and
better work,
you got to get to
bitch.
yoga. Like you can't sit in sadness all the time. You got to get shit done. As I've been saying in my most recent psychologist sessions, I got to hustle.
Exactly.
And I thought to myself, well, I don't live in New York. I don't understand why I'm talking about hustling. Like I don't have a hustling life, but it's my way of understanding. Probably it's my denial. Like I got to hustle. I got to move forward. I got to keep going.
As our bio says, Etai and Karen are 2 people just trying to make ends meet, just like J-Lo.
Exactly. By buying a new iPhone. Okay, so what's the next stage?
After denial comes anger. Why did you leave me?
Yeah.
Why did you have to, like, Lindsay
Why
Lohan?
haven't you married the multiple people that are offering to marry you for visa purposes?
Yes. And as Lindsay Lohan sings in her song, Daughter to Father, why'd you have to go? Why'd you have to go? Daughter to Father. Listen to it, it's a great song. But yeah, it's the anger, it's blaming. You need to find someone, so you can blame God, you can blame the person that's leaving, you can blame the government for changing the visa rules exactly
I
when
like
I
anger.
applied. There's a lot of blame and anger, and again, this is, I think, also an important experience because it is cleansing and it's letting go and it's diverting all of your feelings
And
it's
again, to
satisfying.
bring up a lovely Leo that's also grieving your departure, I think she has projected her anger onto your past lovers. Like she's been screaming all these epithets towards exes and saying, I hate him. He's not for us. Get away. And I'm just like, wow, why are you so angry? But now I see it's part of the grief.
And the beauty when you start to view grief is that you start to give experiences and you charge them with different energy. Okay, so like you hate all my exes now because you secretly hate me for leaving, but you don't want to hate me for leaving, so you might just hate all my exes, which I support.
Have you felt anger throughout this process? I don't think you have.
I don't think I think anger for me is gonna come.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I feel a little bit anger towards my country that I was born in.
Yep.
And I think sometimes I feel anger about like, why wasn't I just like born in a place and stayed in one place? Like knowing, but I know from my chart and from the many psychics and astrologers that I met that I don't have a physical home in this world. And they all tell me once you learn to have a home within yourself, you will realize that the world is just a home as one. But for now, I'm just a bit frustrated that I have to make a choice between 2 countries and 2 homes that, I have friends and family and loved ones in both and passions. But yeah, anger is very interesting. And I also, as a teacher, I could see with different people, students and staff members, the first sentence that someone says to you could be so indicating of what they're feeling, where they are in the stages of grief. Like someone can come up to you and be like, you're not leaving us. Someone can come up to you and be like, you're a shit, why do you leave us? Some people can, and there's more. If we now can go to the next step of the next stage is bargaining, which is my personal favorite. Bargaining is when you make how would you call it? You kind of like try to sweeten the heat, or like try to make it nicer, or try to make excuses like, oh, I'm coming to Israel in 6 months, so we're going to see each other. So it's not goodbye. That's, you bargain. You're like, this is not the goodbye that it is. This is, there's hope.
Been a lot of that. I've heard a lot of people telling you, I'll be in Israel in September. I'll be in Israel in October. Your beautiful Libran friend was like, I'm booking a boutique hotel for when I come to Israel in a month.
Double room?
With double room so that you can stay. And we were like, oh, an Airbnb? She's like, no, a boutique hotel.
A boutique. It's a Libra, come on.
So I was like, wow. So that was a way. I mean, is that denial? Is it bargaining? It's a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You said that bargaining can also look like, this happened because of this.
Yes.
So this awful, sad thing that I'm experiencing happened, but it needed to happen so that this can happen.
Exactly.
So you're trying to make sense of sadness in a way that is computable in our little brains.
Yeah, and I remember watching once on TV, on the news, they interviewed this mother who her daughter just died in a terror attack. And it was literally like an interview from the scene. Like she was she just heard the news and she said, like, I know she's now with God. I know God wanted her, and I know, you know, she's happy or she's watching over me. And I think a lot of the time with death, people bargain in that way. That, and not to say that it's not true. Like maybe it is true that she's up there with God and she's looking over you, but the fact that we choose to say that is as if it didn't happen in a way that I'll never see my child or my friend again. So I give reasons, or I give, like sweeten the deal. And I think it's also something very important. And it's easier. Like if I need to say goodbye now to 50 people, but 10 of them I'm going to see in 6 months, then that's easier. Or if you're breaking up with a partner and you choose to focus on the things that they taught you, you know, one taught me love, one taught me pain, one taught me patience. That's a little bit of bargaining, and I say, why not?
Yeah, it helps us make meaning and make sense of things. You know, I guess it can become challenging when it's really taking away from acknowledging the sadness or a loss, because I think there does need to be some space for that. But who am I to say? Bargaining, yeah, interesting one. Now, the next one. Now, this is my personal go-to / fave. In addition to denial, depression, the big D. And depression, there's your sadness, your I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to move forward, I can't make any sense of this. This is senseless, this is worthless, this is meaningless. And there's no meaning to be made from this. And it can just look like how we really understand grief, crying, not eating, loss of appetite, all of those behaviors. I guess with depression, one of those things when you're grieving any loss or change, sometimes people might have patience for a certain time frame of sadness, and they might not understand why 6 months later you feel that way, or perhaps they're a bit confused as to why you're not feeling depressed, so you're not crying, or you seem stoic, or you seem happy. I was once, when I was traveling in India, having my Eat, Pray, Love experience for 3 months, I met a woman whose husband had passed away. She was from Newcastle in Australia, and she was at the same guru / getaway, guru temple in India, in this meditation area, and she was saying that her husband had passed, and she, as part of her process, was laughing and was joyful about everything that she had gained from him, and she wasn't grieving in the way that society understood, and people thought she had lost her mind. And so she's like, I had to get out of there because I couldn't grieve. I couldn't do what I needed to do because I was just happy, and people didn't get that or couldn't accept that. Yeah. So I think with depression, on the plus side, it's something that is very visible and people might have an understanding of it. I think they don't have an understanding where, as we said earlier, it's a loss that society doesn't really understand. So it might be a friendship, it might be a job, it might be something very small that has changed, which for you is incredibly significant, but we don't get.
People very much they allow you to grieve the things that in their head you should be grieving, a death, definitely, a divorce, a breakup after a significant amount of years, but
a couch going.
Yeah, but the couch is
no one has checked in with me to see how do I feel about my couch going.
I was literally lying on the couch as the hipster couple came to pick it up. I was physically lying.
I was like, get out.
I wanted to spend every single, and maybe me channeling all my feelings towards the couch is about leaving you. It's about leaving the podcast. Not leaving the podcast because we still going to do it, but leaving the structure that we have around it, and live in Melbourne. But after depression, but again, it's not linear. But
Yeah, well, what I'm reading on our little piece of paper, I thought it said acupuncture.
Could help.
Which I was like, that's a really nice fifth stage of grief. Acupuncture, depression, denial, anger, bargaining, and acupuncture. I would say masturbation. I would say consumerism. But anyway, it doesn't say acupuncture. The last stage, or one of the stages, not the last stage because it's not linear, is acceptance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this one's a bit of a tricky one because acceptance, I don't think like maybe acceptance is always like, I'm okay, I'm cool with this. It's just a different stage where you might feel like, okay, I can kind of, maybe I can make some sense of this and it's coherent for me. Or even if it's not coherent, I'm accepting that it's not coherent. And I'm accepting that it's sad and I'm accepting that life is moving on and I need to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I think acceptance is really where it looks so different. Like all of them look different from people, but acceptance is almost, at least for me, is having all of them in equal and like in a specific mix of levels and just be okay with the fact that I don't want to think about it and I'm angry and I'm bargaining and I'm a bit sad, but I'm also excited for the future. And I think that's, in a way, maybe would be the easiest to identify between the signs.
Totally.
Like acceptance, for a Leo would be like the huge, beautiful goodbye party. And not only goodbye party, like the party for when you get to the new country, or like this is the new me coming to like take over Tel Aviv. For Virgo, it will be like letting go of that planner, like the daily planner of Melbourne, and buying a new one for Israel. I don't know, every sign and their beauty. Yeah. But acceptance is definitely, I think in a day I go through all of them many times.
Yeah, I think I've been going through these stages for the last 6 months in different ways. And so I feel like whilst I feel like I'm more towards that acceptance stage, like it's been a real roller coaster and for me a long one, not just, and then I have seen everyone in the last week or two, I see these puppy dog eyes of all your friends and people that adore you here looking at you like, oh no, it's not, I'm not ready. And I'm like, dude, we've been working for this for a while. It's been happening for a while. But we're all going to be there to support one another. As my favorite motto has been, I think people will lose their shit beforehand, before you leave, while you leave, and after you leave.
That's very comforting.
Those are my stages.
I also think a tool that helps me is stepping out of my life. You can call it disassociation, but I rather call it, when does your life look like a sitcom? And just identifying those moments where your life feel like a sitcom, and then you can either tell your friend about that moment or you can send it to Astrology Roast Instagram, and I will send you laughing emojis back. But a few moments were, for example, when they did the staff briefing at school and the principal read, like they gave me a little gift and the principal read a little blurb about, how I worked at school and kind of like my personality and all this, as if I died, my eulogy for working there. And then as he literally on his second sentence, the bell went. And you could see all the teachers are like dying to like...
You're like, we love him, but we really want to smoke.
We love him, but it's period one. We need to go. And it was just like, it really felt like this one of these sitcoms about the workplace and how like no one really cares about anything. And a disclaimer for anyone from my school that listens, I know I love everyone there and like we love each other a lot. But it was just, the power of the bell is stronger than any love. So there's many moments I think that you can just step out of your story and make it funny and make it fun.
And I think when in this experience there's been moments of the sadness and the confusion of this, but then so much laughter and cackling and all of that, which breaks it up a bit and brings it back to, okay, well, we're all just human, we'll see how we go, and
100%.
We got this. Yeah, so look, it's been a journey. We are still going to be podcasting whilst going through all of the stages of grief and change and excitement and newness. I will be grieving whilst looking after a Gemini dog in North Fitzroy. So I'm very, very excited about that because that's another very helpful tool.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I will be going to the Israeli summer.
Yeah.
So for
Oh,
everyone,
fuck you.
everyone that's following me on Instagram, get ready for some beach
Hot photos.
selfies. The reason I'm getting a new iPhone is because my selfie camera is broken.
No.
And I think I manifested it because I really wanted a new iPhone to fill the void. Like, you know how you buy things to fill the void?
Always.
But some voids could really only be filled by an Apple product, like the packaging, the unwrapping, you know, and I saved those. And the last iPhone I bought was the first week that I came to Australia. That was the current one. So I feel like it's a cycle that, you know, I definitely have control over, and that's me deciding to buy an iPhone when I got here and when I'm leaving. So it's not like a cosmic synchronicity, but it is happening. I want to, even though the podcast is continuing, there is an element of change and of grief, and I think it's important to acknowledge. So I want to take a pause and say thank you to Karen, which has been the most amazing partner, and I think this is the best creative project I personally ever taken part of.
Ditto.
And excited to take part of it in the future. And to all of our beautiful listeners, we're going to see you in a fortnight.
Yeah.
With a pre-recorded episode.
Yeah. And thank you, Etai, for screwing everyone up around you with your, you know, abundant, amazing personality and joy and care for people. People are losing their shit around you. I'm seeing it. It's like dominoes. People just collapsing near you because they're so, you know, they love you so much and they're so sad. But it, you know, it isn't it is an ending in a way, but it's a change and it's a beginning. So that's really cool. Thank you to Astrology Roast listeners for your love and support. We're going to keep, you know, doing this for you because, like, what other things do I have to do? I'm not going to the Israeli summer. I'm in the Melbourne winter. So there's no photos on my Instagram at the moment because I'm pale as fuck, and people, fake tan, spray tan will be happening. And look, we didn't talk about we've talked about these stages, but I don't think we've actually talked about what we actually do. And as I said, you know, stalking, getting a spray tan, getting my eyebrows threaded, giving all my clothes away and all my possessions away to the op shop, like where other people purchase things, I shed, and I want it all gone. So if anyone wants some crockery or some cutlery, I've got a lot of stuff and I don't want it.
Hit us up.
So yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff that you can do. If these stages don't sound right for you, throw them out the window, take some new ones, take a new identity, skip town, do what you need to do. But Etai, we will be so sad not to have you in Melbourne. Everyone in Israel, you're so lucky that you get this beautiful bundle of curly hair and specialness. It's going to be heartbreaking for us here, but thank God there's an Israeli wedding coming up.
And we're going to see each other very, very soon. Yeah. I'll miss Melbourne with all my heart. And to the listeners, we meet on the ether, on the internet anyway. So for us, it's just going to be the same.
Yeah, hopefully. It's just only the Australians that will suffer.
Love you all. See you next time on Astrology Roast.
Ah!